I don't know if you just heard what happened here, but that was insane.
Hello and welcome to Toxicated Masculinity, where we talk about making culture, pop culture, horror culture, and anything else that comes up. Joining me today is horrible people. I'm sorry, people that know horror movies. Sorry, I get that confused. Joining me first from Creative Psychopaths is Mark.
Hello. Hello.
And joining us from Movie Timelines is Josh.
How's everybody doing?
So I had an interesting idea, at least I think it was interesting. I guess it's up to you whether it's interesting or not, but to sort of compare and contrast between A24 and Blumhouse movies, and Brandon and Kayla and Jim don't really like horror movies. So that would have been a very one-sided conversation. So I decided to bring in people that actually enjoy horror movies. But before we talk about something horrible, let's talk about something delicious. Josh, what are you having tonight?
I'm just having what is referred to as the brown wine. This is a diet cola. Nothing too exciting or thrilling there. I'm actually not a drinker, not a drinker at all. And the diet cola is my staple. People actually make fun of me because it's pretty much the main thing that I drink, period. Which is I don't know. It's like my only vice, I guess.
We have to give us tasting notes later on.
Yes. I'm definitely getting the brown notes.
That's a double meaning. Yes. Mark, what are you having?
Oh, I'm having the Macho Man's favorite, H2. Oh yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I'm the only one having a cocktail. I tried to think of something that was like horror themed, but I just did the Jungle Bird on the channel the other day, so I'm having a Jungle Bird because it's a really, really great tiki cocktail. It's got Campari and some sweet juices, and it's a really nice, well-balanced cocktail, and it's yummy. All right, so I thought the first thing I would do, because I think when you're talking about A24 and Blumhouse, they have very different kind of vibes as studios. Art house and I don't know, pulp, I guess would probably be the best way to describe it. Oh, that's not entirely true, but kind of the way they look. So when you guys go to look at a horror, go to a new horror movie, what are you kind of looking for? Like Josh, what do you see in a horror movie that kind of that if you see that in a horror movie, that will kind of be something you like or something you think would be appealing?
The main thing I always look for myself, I'm a script guy. I like to think of myself as a sort of a writer, and I know that that's the thing I tend to pay the most attention to. And the biggest thing that you can do to win me over as a horror writer or a horror director or somebody making a horror film is characters. If you're giving me characters that I like and kind of relate to and feel like are well-rounded human beings that I would actually meet in the real world, then I'm on board. And that's the primary thing I'm looking for. And I also want there to be some sort of character development. Like, you give me a character at the beginning of the movie, are they the same person at the end of the movie? Have they gone through anything? Have they changed? And if they haven't, then what was the point of the movie for this character? Those are the kind of things that I mostly pay attention to. I like the character stuff is what I love. And a lot of that comes with dialogue, but it doesn't need to be in dialogue. It can be through their actions and their motivations that you give them. Give me that, and I'm sold.
Yeah, I agree. I think character development is something that's very. It's funny. Last week we did an episode about the Star Trek films, and I think as much as I love Star Trek, character development is something they're generally not very good at, which is. Mark, what about you? What's something you kind of look for when you go to see a horror film? Something that kind of draws you in.
I will watch absolutely everything, so I'm not too discerning in that. I think I've got a bit of a found footage. Movies will always drag me in, but you don't often get to see those at the cinema. So I like an interesting premise, something new. That'll definitely take me there. So I know, for example, like a Jordan Peele movie, in all likelihood, I'm going to go see something different that I haven't seen before. Although I do agree with the character development as well. Even so much as like if you go back to like 80s horror and stuff like that, like even though they didn't develop the characters so much, there was always a camper, at least one camper that you could care about, and you'd be sad if they died. Whereas, certainly in that sort of 2000 slasher movies, it was like, I don't care who dies here. I want everyone to die. In fact, even the final girl can go for me.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of that kind of samey. It was like, if you go back to the Friday the 13th movies, there were characters that are memorable, like Shelley from Part 3, and Crispin Glover, for better or worse, very memorable.
Well, Friday the 13th, I think started it, and yeah, I totally agree with that as well. And but the problem is there became a point in horror where the people making the movies figured, oh, the audience really likes to see these characters get killed. So they tended to make more and more of they'll always have that one character that you would just hate and you wanted to see them die, like the bitchy girl from Friday Part 7, that like when she dies at the end, you're like, yay. But then I felt like horror got to a point where they were just like making every character that person. And yeah, the 2000s era was rife with that, where every single member of the cast was hateable except maybe one, and that was your final girl. And it was just like, well, we'll give you one character that you kind of like. And I don't know, give me more than that one person.
I think Friday Part 7 is the worst movie that I love. Like, it's I think it's kind of a bad movie in a lot of ways, but like you came hotter, and I don't know, it's great and terrible at the same time.
I love Part 7. I have a weird, irrational love for Part 7, even though I'll admit that the first hour is a little slow.
Well, I think you really can't underestimate what Kane Hodder brought to that. I think you kind of, the person who plays the killer is sometimes kind of overshadowed, but he's Jason. And so the flip side, and I guess I should say, so what do I look for in a horror movie? It's funny, as I was writing this question, I was thinking about it, and I have a really hard time. I think the one thing that bothers me, and this is sort of a really nebulous thing, and I don't know if I can nail this down, but there are certain movies where something will take you out of the movie. And I think anytime you're taken out of the movie, then I could just walk away right there. I was watching one of the movies on this list. Well, I'll say it was The Lords of Salem, which I couldn't get through. I watched about 15 minutes of, and it's Rob Zombie. And, if you don't know much about me, know that I despise Rob Zombie and feel that he should have a restraining order, should be taken out him against every camera that's ever been invented. He should not be allowed near them. And so when I see, like, I watched the movie and you see his wife walk by, and I'm just like, well, that's Sherry Moon Zombie. So I like everything in here all of a sudden just feels contrived. So it's like kind of one of those things where if you see something that takes you out of the film, then it's like, why am I even watching this anymore? So that kind of brings up the second topic that I want to talk about before we talk about what we're going to talk about, which is what things in horror movie will pull you out. Will kind of be like, oh, this isn't for me kind of thing. Josh, why don't you go first?
Man, there's a lot of things. But yeah, you know what? Since you're going to invoke the old RZ, I will say something that will bring me out, and it's something that you'll find in a lot of Rob Zombie movies, is when you have a group of characters that are supposed to be your main characters, and all they do is argue and yell at each other. That's going to pull me out immediately, because it's just like, I hate all of these people. I just recently watched a movie called Shark Bait, where it was,
well, didn't we all?
Yes. Yeah. As did the world. And every single character was annoying, and they were just like mad at each other all the time, and like very grating to each other. And I wanted to turn it off within 15 minutes, but obviously I had to continue watching it for the sake of the channel. But it was one of those movies where if I was just on my own sitting there watching a movie, those people and their personas just would have made me be like, done.
Yeah, Zombie's terrible with that. Like both the Halloween movies, like I feel like if you were to cut out the people in a dirty room arguing with each other, that those movies would be like 25 minutes a piece, because it's just like, it's all of it. Mark, what about you? What kind of takes you out of it or turns you off to a horror movie?
I know this is going to sound stupid for a horror fan, but really, really stupid decisions really drive
you were watching the wrong movie, sir.
Really drive me insane. But I also find really, really strange things. Like it's like I'm all right with an over-the-top kill, but if there's a kill that seems like it's something that could happen in reality but wouldn't, it really drives me insane. And for example, the only one I can think of off the top of my head is in the original Halloween 2. Michael Myers traps, I think, a nurse in like a heated bath or something like that. And I'm watching it going, why does this bath have the setting to go to boiling? Like, what is the reason for it? Why does it need the setting? And like I immediately just went, all right, I'm sick of this. I can't watch this anymore.
that bath actually has a secondary purpose of baking potatoes. So that's just makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Health spa, health spa / deep fryer.
There you go. Yeah.
I think it's that for me, it's like, I don't mind if it's over the top, but if it wants to be based in reality, which I guess Halloween isn't really, well, sort of is. That's where it loses me. So it's a bit of a strange thing. Yeah. The only other thing that really takes me out of any film, and I know this is because is anyone who gives themselves a good haircut. It really, really annoys me. I can't watch that. Like,
that is very specific.
Yeah, I know, but like, if a character goes mad or something and shaves the head, and then you see them in the next one and they've got a perfectly shaved head, you did not do that by yourself.
That is 100% valid. Like, they're like yanking out the hair, and the next time they're like perfectly like coiffed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, over COVID time, I couldn't get to the hairdressers, and I had to do it myself. And there was huge lumps of, like bits I had missed. Well, not huge lumps, but you could tell that I hadn't got it. And I don't know what it is about that specific thing, but if it happens, because if it happens in the first series of Walking Dead, and I went, right, that's it, I'm not watching anymore.
Oh, I could talk for a long time. When I was in the Army, actually, there was a guy. So in the Army, when you're in basic or AIT, you have to come down for your formation, where you like show that you've polished your boots and everything. And the guy realized he had been told 2 weeks in a row to get a haircut, and he hadn't gotten a haircut. And so all he had was a Bic razor. And so he, 15 minutes before formation, tried to Bic his head. And the drill sergeants were rather amused by him. I think the number one thing for me, more than anything else that will take me out and turn me off, is being boring. I think you can do a lot. You can be over the top. You can be funny. You can be goofball. But as soon as you get boring, then I have checked out. And like, it's in my mind, that's like the one really unforgivable sin about horror movie is boring. Boring is not acceptable.
Yeah. I mean,
I totally agree.
As I've started to compile, obviously, lists of bad movies over.
Have you seen some bad movies?
I might have seen some bad movies. Yes, it's very possible. I've started to lump them into like 3 categories, and it's like, okay, you've got bad movies that are just completely entertaining because they're that bad. Like Birdemic is one of those movies where it's just so bad that it's just fun and silly, and you're enjoying yourself. But then there's also the bad movies that are just frustrating because they're just like making stupid choice after stupid choice after stupid choice to the point where you're like, what's going on here? Why are you doing this? None of this. Why is this bald man yelling at me? What is going on? Tell me what is happening here. And those are the next level down. But the worst ones are the ones that are like just bad because they're so boring. And those are the hardest ones to get through because there's no entertainment to derive from it. You're not pulling your hair out with frustration, but you're also not laughing. You're just staring at dullness.
I think during one of the Blumhouse movies, I don't even remember which one it was. I turned that one off too. There's a couple I turned off. But I literally had to say, God damn it, movie, you better do something. And it didn't. So I turned it off.
Yeah. There's Blumhouse in my particular view has a lot of movies that I find to be on the duller side of things.
So this is sort of getting into these 2 studios specifically, because I think this is the kind of interesting thing. Do you think that, I mean, obviously they're doing different things. What do you think, what type of movie does A24 do well? And what type of movie does Blumhouse do well? Josh, sorry, I'm calling him.
Oh, sorry.
I'm usually just waiting on people to speak over me.
This is such a mass generalization because I don't feel as if this is the same for every single one of the Blumhouse movies. But in general, my opinion of the Blumhouse films are that they are usually horror movies for people that don't generally watch horror movies. I feel as if they are kind of like, I feel like they're like, oh, you're into David Bowie? Check out this greatest hits album. That's how I feel about it. It's kind of like, oh, I love this artist and I have his greatest hits collection and this is great. And that's what I feel like. I feel like Blumhouse is like greatest hits of horror. It's like all kind of things that you've seen before. It's all stories you've seen before. It's all situations you've seen done in other movies, but they're repackaged and presented in a nice new way. So that there's nothing that's too shocking or different. And I feel like the opposite end of that from A24, the thing that they do well is that they take a little more chances. I think that they're more in line with saying, we're going to try to give you something that you haven't seen before, or we're going to give you something that you have seen before, but we're going to present it to you in a way that you haven't thought of seeing it. And that's that's the difference between the two things to me. I think they're both have a very different approach. You have outliers to both of those, considering that, you've got Jordan Peele working within the confines of Blumhouse. And I feel as if his movies take some chances and do some different things. And I also feel as if A24 has had a couple of, just like standard horror things, but
Slice.
In general,
Slice was,
well, but even
going on there.
But even that, I feel like Slice was taking a little bit of a chance. Like, Slice didn't feel like, even though I didn't care for Slice, I don't feel as if it was like, here's the same thing again, just enjoy, here it is. It was being a little bit bolder. And even A24 had some things like, I didn't care for Saint Maud. I thought Saint Maud was kind of a dud. But I did think
that's interesting. I did too, but I think everybody loved that movie.
I felt like that movie had a lot of love before it came out. And then when it came out, I feel like everyone stopped talking about it because I feel like it was some hype. But then everyone that came out, everyone was like, oh, this is just all right. Okay. And then no one really talked about it after that.
I thought the ending was kind of disappointing, kind of a wet fart. But Mark, so what about you? What kind of things do you think like A24 does well versus Blumhouse?
Well, I tend to think that Blumhouse throws quite a lot of shit to see how much of it sticks, because it feels like they've got a big back catalogue of loads of different weird, well, not even necessarily weird things. And I think they've got some really good hits in there. There's also a lot of misses. Whereas going through the A24 movies, for me, pretty much everyone is a hit. And I think they are a lot more choosy about, the directors that they use and the scripts that they go with and stuff like that. But I also think that, sort of going back to what Josh was saying, is that I think A24 movies are a lot more divisive between, like, I don't like to say true horror fans, because for me, you just enjoy what you want, but there are people who will sit and enjoy the horror for the horror of it, and other people who want more like what Blumhouse is producing. Because I spend a lot of my time, well, no, I don't spend a lot of my time, but I spend a reasonable amount of time on like Facebook groups and things like that. And movies like Midsommar and Hereditary and like Saint Maud are always very divisive, like some people really love it and they either really hate it. And again, my big thing is to sort of let people enjoy what they want to enjoy. But I think that is something that you get from nearly all the A24 films. You can either sit and enjoy a movie for the tension that they build, which they are so good at, or you can go watch a slasher film with Blumhouse, or, whatever else it is they're producing.
Well, I think that actually kind of leads naturally into the next thing that I was going to talk about, because I think if you're talking A24, you really have to ask the question, like, what do we think of elevated horror? Because I think when it comes to A24 clearly is that kind of elevated horror. And like, so for me, just to mention specific examples, so Slice, In Fabric, The Monster, Climax, Saint Maud, The Lighthouse, and False Positive, I couldn't stand those movies. I just hated them with a passion. But then again, Hole in the Ground, I thought Life After Beth was really good. Under the Skin was really good. I literally just finished watching Killing of a Sacred Deer about 2 hours ago. That one I'm on the fence about. It's kind of interesting, but like X and Hereditary and The Vivitch are clearly these incredible accomplishments. So I don't know. So I guess the thing I find about elevated horror is it has a tendency to either hit dead center or like miss entirely. And I don't know, what do you guys think about that? Josh, why don't you go first?
It's weird because I'm kind of on the fence about the term elevated horror.
It's an imperfect term. I'll grant that.
Yeah. I mean, like I get it, but I also think that it's kind of like, I feel like what makes it elevated, like in a way, because
it went to Cannes.
Yeah. But I mean, it's one of those things where I get it. And like, I'm certainly not like when somebody says the phrase elevated horror, I don't roll my eyes and be like, oh God. But it also, I don't know if it's that deserved of a term, because some of the movies that I think that they wedge into that elevated horror element, I don't really feel are that elevated. And I think that sometimes that line between elevated and pretentious can be very blurred. And even things some of the movies people call pretentious. I go, what are you talking about? That was beautiful. So I feel like a lot of that is all interpretive. And one person's elevated horror might be somebody else's remedial horror, because somebody might look at us and say that's elevated horror, but other people might say, no, that's more middle of the road. So a lot of that is all very, consequential. I myself am a fan of a lot of that stuff. I did like The Lighthouse. I don't know if it's a movie that I would go back to and watch multiple times. It's not one I would be like, oh, I need to revisit The Lighthouse and watch.
I think I'd be a little nervous. It was like, I watched The Lighthouse like every other night.
No. But I found it very intriguing. And I do like movies that make me think and make me like kind of pull me into this world. Because if you're building up this world, which I think that The Lighthouse did, it made me feel like I was in that lighthouse, and it kind of built this really great atmosphere and this setting, which I thought was great. And I wanted to see more of that. And I feel as if, I get that. I feel as if I get that it was a little dull. I think things could have moved a little clippier. But all in all, I felt that the pace of it helped to build that atmosphere. So I get it. I'm one of those guys that tends to feel as if all opinions are valid because they're opinions. I like to say that there's a very distinct difference between a movie that is good and a movie that you like. Because there can be a movie that's very good. It's made very, very well, but I just don't like it. And the inverse is there can be a movie that's just made terribly, but I happen to like it. I just watched one. I just watched Clownado, and it's a terribly made movie, but I actually loved it. Thought it was great.
Does that pretty much describe what it is, the title?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, got it.
But it also does. But the title doesn't say it's a blast, which it is a blast. But it's not a very well-made movie. So, and the same thing there too. You can have a movie that is very, very intricately made, that is done really well. It's lit great. Everyone's performances are solid. Perfect example, talking about Blumhouse, The Conjuring. I don't like The Conjuring. I don't think it doesn't pull me in. But I can say that it's a very well-made movie. It's very nicely made.
I would just like to very briefly say my little piece. I won't watch the Conjuring movies. I think the Warrens are bad people, and I can't. I feel like anything I do that puts money in those people's pockets is. I'm not saying people should. If you want to watch them, it's great. I avoid them like the plague.
I think I've made my opinion on the Warrens very clear in any video I've done about The Conjuring, that they are scammers. But regardless, so when it comes to elevated horror, I like, and I said earlier that I like when people take risks, and that elevated horror tends to take a little bit more risks. They push the envelope a little bit more. Doesn't always work. It doesn't always work, but I like that they try.
So I went on Mark's podcast sometime between 2 weeks and 6 months ago, because time doesn't matter anymore. And we talked about a movie called La Llorona, not to be confused with the Curse of La Llorona, which is a bad movie. And it's very much, I think, would fall into the realm of an elevated horror movie. We talked about that a lot. It's a, Guatemalan film about, it's sort of using horror to talk about this dictator Mott, who did all these atrocities in Guatemala. So Mark, I don't know, we talked about that film together. What is your opinion on elevated horror? Like, what do you think it means? Is it important? I think, just real quickly, when I say elevated horror, I think we all kind of know what I'm talking about, even if the term isn't very artful. It's just kind of like, a Cannes horror movie, I guess is the best way of putting it.
Yeah, no, I don't like the term elevated horror, and I hadn't heard the term elevated horror until the new Scream movie. I hadn't even come across that as an actual term for what I guess A24 is, and I don't like it as a term, because I think there are movies going back that I might suggest to you would be elevated horror in, because what I'm thinking about like The Exorcist, for example, is what you would say something like an Oscar-worthy sort of horror movie. So it stands above the other stuff because it's such a well-made film. And I think people do tend to associate horror movies with schlock.
Not always incorrectly.
No, because a lot of them are, and I like the schlock. But I like this new wave of horror that's coming through, which, I really liked Saint Maud, because it actually, I found it quite affecting. And you said you thought the ending wasn't that good. To me, it sat with me for days and days, which horror movies rarely do. I normally turn them off and go, probably have an opinion about it, but I wouldn't think about it for too long. Whereas these elevated horrors, if you will, they do tend to leave you thinking, I think, for a lot longer. Mm-hmm. But like I said, because they tend to be slow and they're not flashy or anything like that. They're very slow, and you have to be willing to get lost in them. And if you can't, then you just won't enjoy them. Like, to me, for example, Hereditary is a lesson in tension, and Midsommar to a degree as well.
I do have some unpopular opinions about Hereditary. I think it is 95% of a great movie. And I think 5% of it, I thought kind of fell apart, but 95% of Hereditary is basically a perfect horror movie.
Yeah, I think most people would actually agree with you that it starts losing its way towards the end.
What did you guys think? What are your opinions? Because we're going to get into talk about some specifics. Did you guys like the end of Hereditary or not like the end of Hereditary?
I love it.
Yeah, I like it.
Hereditary is one of the few movies. I might be one of those, like, I guess, like, cliche, but it was one of the best horror movies I've seen. I don't know. I was kind of blown away by it. It not only just the atmosphere of it that it creates, but the look of it, the design of it. I mean, that dollhouse stuff was just magical. It has easily one of the most disturbing scenes that I've seen in a horror film in the past 10 years. What with Toni Collette crying and screaming in anguish in the background is like,
Okay, first of all, Toni Collette was absolutely robbed from an Oscar. You're not gonna get an argument from me on that. It's totally because the Oscars hate genre filmmaking. She was easily the best actress that year, and I watched the Oscars every year. No actress at the Oscars was better than her that year.
Yes, and I really liked the ending. I feel as if you needed some, because the reason why I like the ending is I feel as if it did walk that line, because the movie is a metaphor, and it's kind of a funny thing, because before I had heard the phrase elevated horror, I used to refer to movies such as that as metaphor. So because it was just always like, okay, Hereditary is not really about like a ghost or cult. It's about, insanity being passed down through family generations. And the ending, I think, walks that line because, again, I think a part of the criticism of it might be like, well, it does this whole, like, is it about insanity or is it about supernatural? And the ending tips it too far that it is supernatural. But, and again, I feel as if that's an interpretation of it. But my interpretation of it is I feel as if it could still very easily sway into that land of insanity because you're now just seeing from the son's point of view. And I'm on board. I love Hereditary. I feel it was one of the better horror movies I've seen in the past era of horror.
Mark, you like kind of on the same page basically, or?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I can count on my hands the number of horror films that have actually, I don't know if the right term is allowed to scare me, but that's one of the ones that's left me. No, it's scared's not the right word, but tense, like on the edge of my seat, like, which is what I want. I want that from
maybe more less scared and more like terrified. Like
yeah.
Well, we're at the era now because it's funny because horror movies don't scare you. Don't scare you anymore. I mean, once you get past the age of like 15 years old, horror movies don't like scare you.
Well, there's like jump scares and those like jump scares.
Yeah, but those are like more startling. Like and the movie like movies that unsettle you. Those are like what's scary now. If they leave you like unsettled and feeling like ugh. Like if you feel creeped out afterwards, not so much like you're afraid of what's in your closet, but we're just like, you just don't feel like the world is right. That's a feeling that not a lot of horror movies give you.
So for me, Hereditary, I can literally tell you the exact moment where the film kind of lost me. And that's where the one person gets like whooped up into the treehouse. And I literally pictured like a little whoop. And that's what like took me out of it. I was just like, oh. And it was sort of like you're having what Hereditary to me reminds me of is you had a great cocktail, a great starter, a great entree, and then your dessert that was just okay. And that's how I view Hereditary. Like everything was great. And then the ending was good. And it's not really from an analytical perspective. And I do kind of analyze movies a fair amount. But that was, to me, was just viscerally. Like, I just kind of felt like, how in a horror movie, when your stomach drops because something just like crazy happens. In this, my stomach just like sat down because it was just like, oh, okay. And that's my only problem with it. But again, 95% of that movie is basically perfect.
Yeah.
So I guess on that same track, what other movies from A24 do you think are kind of standouts? Ones that like you really like, that's a great one. That's one to kind of like look at. And Josh, why don't we go you first?
Well, I mean, I feel like I would be remiss to not point out Green Room, which was one of the earlier A24 movies. And I guess it's kind of like borderline whether or not you want to call that a horror movie, but I mean, it feels like a horror movie to me. I do love The Witch. But one is weird. I guess it's another one that I guess it's one that I find very personally affecting, and it may or may not fall under horror, is A Ghost Story, which I don't know if we're going to call that horror or not.
So when I was looking at the A24s, I've seen Ghost Story. That's one of those ones that falls into the many categories of movies that I liked and my wife did not like. I didn't classify it as horror, although classification of horror is one of those like weird ass things that like some people like to classify horror as only this tiny little bit of thing. And other people classify horror as anything where somebody's like, ugh, and that's, I don't know where the line is. And I don't find those discussions particularly interesting as far as people saying, no, this isn't horror and this is horror. It's like, who cares? If you say it's horror, fine, whatever.
Yeah. I'll just point that one out, but whether or not it is horror or it is not, it was one of those movies that just sat with me for days. And I think that it may have, I watched it around the time that there was a very impactful death in the family. So the timing of watching that movie at that exact moment was very like key. And I probably cried for a solid 45 minutes after finishing that film. I was just like, so like out of it. But I mean, I guess if we want to stick to ones that are more traditionally horror, The one that I would also mention out there that I feel like does get talked about some, but not really enough, is Climax. Climax is such a weirdly unsettling film, strangely disturbing. And I mean, Gaspar Noé had definitely knows how to make a movie. Like,
Gaspar knows.
Yes, he does. He knows how to knock you off your feet and make you afterwards go, I don't feel very good right now. And that movie just, man, yeah.
I sat through that movie stone-faced and bored for basically the entire runtime.
Oh, really?
I think Climax is maybe my least favorite A24 movie.
Oh my gosh.
I hate it. It's fine. It's one of those things. To clarify, like, everybody has their opinions. Again, Mark and I disagree on Saint Maud. There's nothing wrong with that. If the movie affects you in a certain way, it didn't affect me, then more power to you. And if Climax affected you in a certain way, it affected me by having me almost fall asleep. I will say that too about Noah's films is I feel as if, much like Irreversible, which again, very difficult movie to get through. You could probably classify that as a horror movie if you want.
Yeah. But the thing is like, I feel as if it's less of a movie and more of just this like experience of like, here you go, feel bad for 2 hours. That's kind of what it was.
I don't know. Yeah. So, Climax, man. And so that movie falls into the one, because I try to watch some movies with my wife, especially the A24s. And that's one that fell into one where we both hated. I don't know, Mark, what are some of the A24 movies you've seen that kind of stand out to you?
I'm going to start my list with Tusk.
Oh boy. How have you two brought up the two A24 movies that I hate most?
Well, the thing about Tusk is I used to like Kevin Smith when I was younger, as most people do. But I watched it really not knowing what I was expecting. So when they finally reveal, I've forgotten the name of the actor off the top of my head now, but the main actor as a walrus and like a human skin walrus suit, it was like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting this. And it's a very odd film.
Very odd.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
Justin Long was driving.
It was Justin Long. Yeah, it's like I say, it's a very odd film. And it wasn't until doing research for this that I realized it was even an A24 film. I didn't think that it was, because it seems so far away from what they might do. But,
it very much seems more Blumhouse than it does A24.
I will say I feel like Tusk benefits, as does a lot of Kevin Smith movies. I feel like benefits from the story behind the making of it, because Tusk, as viewed as this weird parody of Human Centipede, is actually pretty hilarious and kind of enjoyable. But like, I think when you just sit down and watch it as just a movie, like, I don't get a lot out of it, but like knowing like the storyline of like what went into making it and the background of getting to that point, it changed the experience for me and made it more entertaining.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see him do something like that as well, because it's very far removed from anything he's done before.
Yes.
First of all, to be fair, I have so when I was perfect age for Clerks. Clerks came out in what, like 94, I think, 93. That's close.
Yeah, definitely early 90s. Yeah.
And so, like, as a white kid, like middle class white kid, you think of like, oh, that's so groundbreaking. And like, you go back and like, I watch Kevin Smith movies now, and I was like, he's writing nothing. Like, most of those movies are just kind of people talking and not talking about things that I care about. And it's one of those things, I think, especially as you grow up and you watch movies that you watch growing up and liked growing up, and you have to sort of reconcile those movies with who you are now and the things you like now. And Kevin Smith and Quentin Tarantino, for me, were the two big like castaways that I rewatched the stuff that I liked when I was a kid, and now I can't stand it. Because it all feels very kind of self-indulgent. And not, by the way, I'm definitely not getting any new friends by saying I don't like Quentin Tarantino or Kevin Smith.
Well, you'll get the friend from me by saying you don't like Quentin Tarantino, because I am not a fan.
Man, you rewatched Pulp Fiction, and just who cares? Like a lot of his stuff, just who cares? It's a big old nothing.
I have never seen the entirety of Pulp Fiction.
When I saw it when I was like 16 years old, I thought it was the most genius thing that had ever been produced on film. I see, Mark, were you like a Quentin Tarantino person when you were younger?
Yeah, big Tarantino, yeah, all over it. And I'm with you. I don't really like those films anymore. And I don't really like Kevin Smith films anymore either. I've got a place for Dogma, and I don't mind Mallrats. But as far as like, you know, most of the stuff that he made, it's like
Chasing Amy is so hard to watch now.
Oh boy,
it's so hard to watch now.
Yeah. You sort of come out of that. You come out of that age when you sort of, well, I was like 14 in 94. So you come out of these sort of hilarious stoner comedy and, you know, over the top violence of Quentin Tarantino and, ooh, everybody's swearing, you know.
Well, I think with Kevin Smith, it was weird because like there's your stoner comedies, your dudes, where's my cars, and your other stuff like that, where it is that just stupid stoner comedy. But I felt like Kevin Smith, at least when I was a kid, it felt like it was elevated stoner comedy, to use a word we have already banned. But you watch it now and it's stoner comedy that thinks it's smarter than it is, I think.
Hey, they talk about Star Wars and so do I.
I know, we're like the same people.
So yeah, sorry, the other A24 is I thought Midsommar was amazing. I had to watch it a couple of times, in fact, because the first time I watched it, I was like really drawn in. And this is what I was saying to you before. Like, you have to sit and be drawn in by that film, because I can see why people think it's boring. Because if you let your attention wander from it for any amount of time, then I can see why people think it's boring. But yeah, it's so generally unsettling. But like I say, I watched it again, and it's an interesting movie where it sort of it spells out a lot of the plot as you go through. That's not the exact words I'm looking for, but you know what I mean. Like as you're watching it, it sort of tells you ahead of time actually what's going to happen the whole way through. It's quite interesting. It's quite interesting and clever in that way.
I want to mention Midsommar because I had some thoughts about that. So the first time I watched Midsommar, I was kind of on the fence about it because it's Ari Aster, right? It's the same guy from Hereditary, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was kind of afraid I was going to get the same experience I had in Hereditary, and you don't, because it is a very different movie from Hereditary in a lot of ways. But I felt like if you had asked me the first time I watched it, I would have said I liked Hereditary more. But I just had my wife watch it, which she had kind of mixed feelings about it. And I actually really like Midsommar way more the second time I watched it. I feel like you get more. It creates a lot of questions. So one clip I've used on the channel before is Terry Gilliam talking about the difference between Steven Spielberg and Stanley Kubrick. And this is me being, preposterous for a moment. And talking about how the difference between something like 2001: A Space Odyssey and Schindler's List. And the difference being that Schindler's List is a film that doesn't ask you questions. You don't leave Schindler's List with questions, you leave with answers. Whereas 2001: A Space Odyssey, you leave the film with nothing but questions. And that's sort of a better thing. And when you leave Midsommar, like I had tons of questions, especially the second time, maybe even more so the second time than the first time. I had almost more questions than I did answers. And I felt like means it's like kind of a thought-provoking film. And I thought there were interesting questions about, what is this group? Are they good? I mean, they're clearly not like good in the sense that we would say good, but they're also incredibly empathetic, and they have this empathy that we don't have and that this main character is looking for. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed the film a second time. Whereas the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, okay, it's kind of, Hereditary in the Sun or something, which is not a fair way to characterize it at all.
No.
Josh, what do you think of Midsommar? Because I think that's an interesting one to talk about.
I really enjoyed Midsommar. I will say that I feel like that's in the same category as The Lighthouse, or it's a movie that I was fascinated by, but I feel as if I want to leave it there. And maybe not, I'm not sure if have not been quick to revisit Midsommar.
Mm-hmm.
But I do. I mean that's not in any way a negative thing about the film. I very much was pulled in by it. We did watch it split over 2 nights because my wife fell asleep halfway through. Not because of the movie being dull, because she falls asleep at every single movie ever in history.
My wife.
Ever. So yeah, so but I found it really fascinating and really interesting, and it is. I will very much agree with Mark. I feel as if the movie does telegraph what you're going to see. Like, you kind of figure it out, but the movie's not really about that, and that's a really interesting thing for it to do, because it's saying, look, this is the end point, this is the end game, but it's more about how we get there than it is about the actual finale.
It's almost like if they showed you the last 2 minutes of the movie at the beginning of the movie, it wouldn't change your enjoyment necessarily, because it's
right.
Kind of the way you get there and the things they're talking about on the way there, what's really important.
Yes.
I think that's why I liked it the second time, because I wasn't thinking about that. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, it just a really interesting movie. And again, a movie with another really, really upsetting scene in the earlier part of it. When she finds out that her family had done what they did, and just that scene with Florence Pugh just like breaking down, just fantastic and gripping, and just really pulls you in fairly early on in the movie, that just makes you just feel unsettled and disquieted, and just realizing that you're going to go on this experience now, and you've started this experience in a bad place.
The one that sort of broke my wife early on was the suicide.
Yes,
those 2 people like that is where that, oh shit, like it is sort of stakes raising to say the least, where you're like, oh shit, like this is a thing, this is totally, and it's very, very graphic. And my wife was kind of upset by it because she thought it was too graphic. She's not really a big fan of especially graphic horror movies. I kind of thought it was graphic because it kind of needed to be, because the whole thing about this group is the idea of things are visceral and people are empathetic, and that everything has to it's all about this human experience, and everybody kind of has to be a part of it. Whether it's well, they didn't show anybody being born, but when Florence Pugh's character is very upset, everybody's like empathizing with her and feeling the same thing. When the people are on the ground dying, everybody's feeling that. And this sort of idea of this group, this community of true empathy, which is something that may or may not be present here in the United States. Anyway, Mark, I carried off on your Midsummer, so I apologize.
No, that's what we're here for, isn't it? No, because the only 2 that I've really, other ones that I want to talk about was Witch or whatever you want to call it. Which was an odd film for me because I liked it. I liked the way it was filmed. I enjoy all the dialogue and everything like that. But from a horror point of view, I didn't get a lot out of it. If that makes any sense. And like I say, it's one of those movies that was perfectly well made, and I did enjoy it, but I didn't get any horror out of it. And X, which I enjoyed the first half of, and not just because of the porn.
Sure.
Yeah.
I will state really quick that X is one I have not yet watched, so I guess I'm asking for no spoilers, I guess.
All right, okay. Well, then
I don't think it's not super a spoilery kind of movie. I would
no, they got.
No, well, I'll what I will say is I enjoyed the build up of the characters in that before the actual horror part takes place. When the horror bit kicks in, it was less interesting to me. Although I think I recently found out that one of the characters plays one of the other characters.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. That's kind of a.
Is it? I didn't
actually know that until after I watched. I didn't even know that when I watched the movie. I learned that when I was looking afterwards.
Yeah,
it's not even really super obvious. But anyway, one thing that I think, Josh, you talk about liking characters. I think that you would probably like X because all the people that go out there have distinct personalities.
Yeah.
Like all the people that go out there are, and they're not one dimensional either. They're sort of kind of a little deep.
Yeah.
which I thought was kind of interesting in a movie like that. And they're going to do another one, which I'm not sure if I'm interested in them doing another one, but we'll see.
I'm behind on a lot of current movies because one of my tough situations is that I watch a lot of movies for the channel. And so a lot of my movie watching is specifically things to do for a video. But then the movies that I watch that are like sometimes when I'm doing editing work, I'll specifically watch movies that are not for the channel. But because I'm working, I don't really want to have something that I want to be fully invested in. Mm-hmm. So I won't put in like a quality movie. Like I want to sit down and watch X. Like I want to pay attention to it. I don't want it to just be playing on a screen while I'm working. So a lot of movies like that, and I haven't seen anything everywhere all at once yet either, because that's another one that I really want to sit down and enjoy. And because my daughter is home for the summer, I have not had that. That time.
Everything Everywhere All at Once is good.
Yeah, I'm very excited about watching that one. I'm also waiting for my wife to watch that one with me because I know she'll really enjoy it.
That's one of the few movies that I remember walking out of just smiling.
Yeah.
Being like, wow, that was something.
Yeah, I haven't had time to watch that either. Similar.
I don't think it's not really horror though. I don't think exactly.
No, it doesn't. But it's definitely A24, isn't it?
Oh yes, very much so.
Oh, actually, there is one more film from A24 that I remember watching, and I'm going to say that I remember watching, and I'm not sure. Under the Skin with
Scarlett
Johansson.
Oh, crikey! I can't believe that I forgot Scarlett Johansson. It to be fair, it is 1 a.m. here.
Yes, we want to thank Mark for joining us at an ungodly hour and with this.
But the thing is, I don't remember that much about it. I remember that it's got a good degree of tension in it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a moment in that film that's incredibly unsettling where I think she watches someone drown.
Mm-hmm.
There's a child on a beach, and it stays with it for so long.
That whole sequence is just so like nerve-wracking.
Yeah,
I feel like Under the Skin, like there are so many movies that like you may know fairly early on whether you're going to like them or not, and then like your opinion is usually solidified throughout the movie. I feel like Under the Skin, I was on the fence for almost the whole movie, whether I was like, is this a good movie or not a good movie? Because there's so many good elements to it, but I'm just not sure. I don't know. It's a very strange movie. I did come out with it being a good movie though.
Yeah, I bet it's weird because it's another one that I would categorize more as, I feel as if it's less a movie, like this is less a ABC film and more as it is an experience. And that movie's very interesting and very unsettling.
The one other movie that and this one I was really on the fence as to whether you can call this a horror movie or not. I kind of like Enemy. I think it's a strange movie. And the ending is
that ending
difficult to decipher. I watched a bunch of videos about it. I don't know. Did you guys like Enemy or not like Enemy?
I liked Enemy. Enemy is not one that I was like really on board for. I found Enemy interesting. I guess I wasn't too engaged with it. I think it's one of Denis Villeneuve. Is that how you say his last name? I feel like it's one of his most personal movies, and I feel it definitely has quite a bit to say. But ultimately, I don't know. I didn't get as wrapped up in it as I had hoped, but I did find it very interesting. And I thought it was one. I definitely thought about it for like a good day or so afterwards, like trying to figure out how everything happened, what it all meant, what was the time frame. And obviously what that ending meant and all that. But it didn't engage me as much as I had really hoped, but I did like it.
And by the way, if you like, I've always heard Denis Villeneuve, but that could be totally wrong. We talked about Dune on this channel for like 7 hours. So if you're interested in that type of stuff, we talked about a whole bunch of Dune. So if you like Dune and Denis Villeneuve, we've done that.
Real quick, can I mention one that from A24 that I really that was like a complete that I have a dislike for.
Hold that thought. We will.
Okay, got it.
We will get there.
Okay, all right.
We've sort of already covered the ones that I don't like. So going from A24 and elevated horror, the term that we sort of agree we don't really like, but it's what we got. So Blumhouse, do they do quality over quantity?
No, it's the other way around, isn't it? Quantity over quality, for sure.
Or quantity over quality, sorry.
Do you mind if I switch my camera off?
So do you think they do quantity over? Yeah. Do you think they make too many movies or not?
I don't know if it's too many movies. It's just, I mean, I just feel as if like I feel as if they found their niche. They found what sells, and it's just like I don't even know if it's a question of like focusing on the quantity or the quality. I think it's more just like their formula. They found their formula. They found what sells, and I think that they stick to it. Occasionally they'll branch out a little bit, but in general, I think it's kind of like, you know, the Marvel formula in a way where it's kind of, we know that this is what works, so let's just go with what works.
The one thing I want to disagree just a little bit on that, because you say they found their niche, but they kind of don't have a niche, because their niche is kind of everything. I mean, you've got films like Paranormal Activity, but you've also got like Creep, which is totally different. You got kind of more mainstream stuff like Insidious, and then or like Invisible Man, which Invisible Man could probably be classified as elevated horror in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but I feel as if their niche is basically kind of, honestly, I feel as if it's people in a house and there's some sort of force that's trying to get them. And more often than not, it's people that just moved into a house. And over the course of the movie, it's like spooky stuff happens and it almost gets them. And then finally at the ending, everything kind of all happens at once. And, you know, Insidious kind of follows that formula. The Ouija movies follow that formula. I mean,
to be fair, you have to separate the two Ouija movies. Very different, because we have Crap and then Mike Flanagan.
Yes, although I can't, I'm not allowed to call the first Ouija Crap because the writer director is a friend of mine. So well, I enjoy Ouija. It's a very enjoyable film. But yeah, I mean, I feel as if that their niche is that. It's kind of like more often like ghost stories or people in a house movies. Not that every movie is kind of like that, but I mean, let's face it, they've got the Insidious movies, they've got the Sinister movies, they've got Paranormal Activity. Even the Purge movies could kind of fall into this a little bit of like people in a house, and you know, it's like, oh, something's trying to get us. The Gallows is kind of the same thing. They've got so many movies that are just that same formula of like, hey, we just bought this new house, seems like it might be haunted. Yeah, seems like, oh, you know what? It is haunted. Okay.
It's funny to do a parody of a Blumhouse where somebody's like, hey, I think there's something wrong with this new house. And then it just explodes and you roll credits. I don't know, Mark, what do you think of Blumhouse? Is it a lot of quantity and quality is questionable, or do you think what do you think?
I think, to be quite honest, I think Blumhouse makes some great films. You mentioned some of them. Personally, I think the first Paranormal Activity is an absolute genius of a film, and Creep 2.
Oh yeah, those are great.
Are excellent. We just did Creep on the podcast. That was the most popular episode so far. It was downloaded like I've never known.
Creep's real good. Even the second one's good, I think.
Yeah, I think I always lump the two of them together because I did my own top 5 found footage, and I'd lump the two of them together because I really think it's a continuation of a story, and they don't tell the same story the second time, which I really thought was good. There was Hush, which I thought was really great. Admittedly, that does fall under the formula of someone's moved into a house, but it's not exactly the same. You know, it has got something different to it. It starts one way and moves in a different direction.
Hush is great. I think that's a really, really solid movie.
Really great movie. I'm with you on Invisible Man. I think Invisible Man stands almost as, like you say, an elevated horror, really. It's totally something different. You know, Get Out, I'd say, was seminal almost. You know, that movie's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And another movie that could probably qualify under the dreaded elevated horror.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I really like the Belko Experiment. I thought that was one of the most interesting films I've seen.
No, so the Belko, he was bringing up the Belko Experiment. I don't dislike the Belko Experiment, but there was another film called Mayhem, which is very, very similar to the Belko Experiment. And I kind of like that one a little bit better. And I don't think that's Blumhouse or.
Yes, I thought Mayhem was better than the Belko Experiment. I did not. I thought this Belko Experiment was. It was just, man, I was so excited about watching that. I was just completely disappointed by it.
Well, it was, who's the guy who directed Romeo and Juliet and Guardians of the Galaxy?
James Gunn.
Yeah. So it was like James Gunn, but
although he only wrote Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, he did only write it.
Yeah. Lloyd directed it.
That's right. I got my picture take with him at a Comic-Con once. That was pretty cool. But no, like James Gunn, I think he didn't direct it. He like produced it and maybe co-wrote it or something.
I think, yeah, it was an early script of his that he had written that I think was just one of those like drawer, like it was like, oh, we wrote this a while ago, you know, it's just sitting in a drawer and somebody took it and made it a movie. So
Mark, what other Blumhouse movies kind of stand out to you?
Let's see. I really liked the movie Cam.
Oh, I did too. That was a really good one.
That was a movie that I watched once and I was like, did I like that? Go back in again and go, oh yeah, no, it was pretty good actually.
I made a ghost one.
Let's see. I just watched Black Phone, which actually was vaguely disappointing.
I didn't like Black Phone that much. I think spoiler alert for a podcast you're going to hear in 5 seconds. When I was doing this, I was putting together a little list of each one of the movies, and I was classifying it just as a binary. Is it a good movie or a bad movie? Which is kind of a weak binary because it's like, you know, that means, you know, Hereditary and Jezebel are both good movies, even though they're clearly not good in the same scale. And so I classified Black Phone as a good movie, but in actuality, it is I think a pretty solid C.
Yeah, it had a lot of potential. One of the things I actually really hate about horror films is bleak endings, and I know I know that sounds stupid. I don't mind a bleakish ending, but it seemed like at one point that was all we got was bleak endings all the time. But with Black Phone, I was expecting a bleak ending. I thought, oh, this isn't going to end the way that I expected it to, but it just plays out. And I think that's what I really didn't like about it. Like what you're watching just plays out and there's no real twists or turns to it. It just, but I will say
totally honest, I already forgot how it ended.
I will say that the young lad in it, whatever his name is, he was good. I thought he was a really good actor.
Yeah, I think so too. But I sort of already forgot the ending. I thought that movie was just like, it was one of those like in the 90s, there was, especially 2000s, just all those horror movies that came out and you just watch them and you're like, it goes in as soon as it comes out. It's just like, it's kind of nothing horror.
Yeah. Let's see. What else have I got written down? I've written down quite a few. I quite liked the new Halloween, 2019, was it?
18, I think.
18, yeah, sorry.
Maybe not so much the sequel.
No.
Don't get me started.
I ended up, based on what you were saying, that I ended up giving Halloween Kills good movie because, because I enjoyed it more on a second viewing because I knew what I was going into. But I hated it the first time round. I really hated it, and I really hate this idea. And either I missed it or it's definitely there that Michael Myers, all he wants to do is get to his house and look out the window. Because that was all I got from it all the whole time. Was like he's just trying to look out of his window. What? Like
Evil dies tonight.
Kill his sister because she was sat where he wanted to sit. I really didn't understand what that plot point was. It was clever to say, oh, he's not actually after Laurie Strode. She's just always been in his way. I thought that was a clever twist, but then to just go, he likes looking out of his window.
Well, don't we all like looking out a window?
I really didn't get it. So I obviously haven't added that to my list. Let's see.
I'm going to stay quiet on Halloween Kills because literally I could just go on for the next 15 minutes.
Oh, we'll be talking about Halloween Kills. Don't worry.
This falls under the category that Josh was saying, but I don't mind it. Sinister, which I quite... Actually, the main thing I like about that is when it flicks to the sort of camera footage videos and you see these sort of kills that the kids have done, which I thought was quite interesting part of it.
My problem with the Sinister movies is, so I'm from Iowa and big Slipknot fan, so every time the killer came on, I was like, isn't that the guy from Slipknot? Like that's one of the guys from Slipknot. He's just probably gonna play a song or something. It's not that scary.
Yeah, everything in Sinister outside of the film clips of the deaths I didn't care for, but those film clips were really well done. Everything else I'm not for me.
Yeah. No, that's the only reason I really mentioned it, because it gets a bit of a rap as being a really scary film, but it's not scary in the slightest. But I do like those footage bits. And the last two that I want to mention, one I liked and one I really didn't like, but I can appreciate them.
Hold off on the didn't likes. We'll talk about those in just a moment.
All right, okay. Well, I quite enjoyed Happy Death Day. I thought...
Oh, yeah, I love that movie.
I thought it was interesting for them to take that Groundhog Day sort of idea and turn it into a horror film. I actually thought that was pretty good. So I mean, overall, I've given you a pretty decent list of Blumhouse films that I quite like.
Honestly, I think the second one is bad, and I still like it anyway. Happy Death Day to You. It's like, it's not good, but I still like it.
It's not as good, but it's so much fun.
It leans way more into the comedy
and the sci-fi.
Yeah. But I liked it. I actually quite liked the second one.
So, Josh, what are some of your top Blumhouse movies?
Real quick, I want to point out that I do very much enjoy Creep, but Creep and Creep 2 are also excellent. Although I will say that Creep almost ruined itself for me with its ending. The ending of Creep, I feel like, is one of it's so disappointing to me. And so it was one of those moments where I was just very, very frustrated by it. It was just like, oh, come on.
I'm going to be honest. It's been so long. How does it end? I don't even remember that.
He calls the guy and asks him to meet him, and the guy does. And so the guy goes to a lake and he just sits on a bench staring out on the lake, apparently not ever looking around. And the guy, I forget the killer's name, just slowly walks up behind him and hits him in the head with an axe and kills him. Like, why the guy would go to meet this person and then turn his back for a prolonged period of time and stare off into nothingness. It's just, it was one of those moments of just like, okay, I know that this is a movie and I should be suspending disbelief, but I can't for this. It's too far, because the whole rest of the movie has worked on this great sense of realism. And now you've kind of thrown me into a typical horror trope, and I'm not on board.
But you don't understand. Horror movies take place in an alternate universe where people don't have peripheral vision.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Really explained.
We'll agree that bit is dumb, but after that, it flicks back to Joseph, as he calls himself at the time. And we see a different Joseph than we've seen all the way through the film. And we see this calculated killer. So you're right, that bit is dumb. But then I think the ending does save itself by going, oh, by the way, this is something else. And like I was just saying to Mike, Creep 2 is so good. Good because it gives you a different film. Yeah. It's really great. Sorry.
But another one that I don't, and again, I I missed a little bit of it because of the plane stuff, which I already looked up, and it was apparently they were doing a flyover of the All-Star game, Dodger Stadium. So that's what
I prefer to think you're in a Red Dawn situation.
I know, but Wolverines. One that I will call out is Hush, which I thought was a very good, tense little movie. It's nothing that rewrites the game in terms of a horror movie, but
Mark brought that up as another one of the ones where people move into a house and something happens.
Yes, yeah, it is it is that formula, but again, I think that it's not always about defying the formula. Sometimes it's about giving you the formula in the best way possible. And Flanagan, his movies to me are almost always kind of that, where I feel like almost every movie he did, I enjoy. I don't think there's any of them that I just overwhelmingly love, but I really enjoy, and I really enjoyed Hush. I was on board for it, and I thought it was a well done little flick. And then, and as cliche as this is, I'm a sucker for the Jordan Peele end of Blumhouse, because I feel as if Get Out and Us were both a 1-2 punch of very good movies with a lot to say. Obviously, I think that Get Out had a lot to say about race, which I thought was a very interesting thing, because you don't often see horror movies really taking that discussion. And I thought that Us, whereas I believe that a lot of people think that it's about race or talk about it in terms of race, but I think it was much more of a class warfare movie than it was a racial overtone movie.
I would agree.
And I
almost more about consumerism, I think, than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. And I really enjoyed both of those movies. I feel like Get Out was a little bit of a deeper movie than Us, but I thought that Us had a lot of really good stuff going on it. And I also
people can comment below what they think of Nope, since that, as you're seeing this, came out last week or possibly the week before. Who knows?
Yeah. Yes. I'm looking
release
forward to
schedules.
Nope. I know. Go figure. I am looking forward to Nope. I haven't seen it yet, but obviously. But yeah, those are the ones that really stick out. I will admit that when I look over a list of movies from Blumhouse, as opposed to looking over the list of A24, where I look down the list and I go, oh, that was cool. Oh yeah, there's that. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that one was cool. There's not much here that is that I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, there's ones like Upgrade where I'm like, oh yeah, Upgrade was pretty decent. Yeah, I enjoyed Upgrade. Yeah, Happy Death Day. I liked Happy Death Day. It was pretty fun. Even like all those. In a Valley of Violence, that weird Thai West horror sort of Western movie. It's pretty cool, I think, but it's not great. I mean, none of them. I don't see any of these movies that I would say that's great, and I loved that movie. Even ones that I enjoyed at the time, like I see the Gift on here, which again I think is arguably horror, but it is kind of. I mean, it's a sort of a stalker movie, which I liked. I thought it was good, but again, I'd never rewatch it. I wouldn't rewatch it, and it didn't fascinate me that much. I'd be like, oh yeah,
I love The Gift. I thought it was great.
I thought it was a really good movie, but I mean, it's not one that like it didn't bowl me over or anything. Like, there's really nothing here that like has me that pumped up.
I would mention The Gift is one that I liked a lot, and it gets back to a movie from A24 that I didn't mention that I also like a lot, and it took me 2 views to like, and that's It Comes at Night. Because I think It Comes at Night is God, the actor now is escaping my brain because he's the star of both of them.
I'm gonna.
I promise we all know horror movies.
I'm gonna hold my tongue on It Comes at Night until we get to the next section.
Anyway, I thought The Gift was really good. The other one I was going to mention that I thought was good, and it's not because you sort of mentioned films that don't really break the genre in any particular way, but just do it really well. Aside from a little bit of janky CGI, I really like Dark Skies. I thought it was done really well. I thought it had some really solid jump scares. It's the one there's aliens.
Oh yeah. I didn't dislike it.
I can't think of actors' names now. They're all gone from my brain.
Kerry Russell. Yeah.
Kerry Russell.
Felicity is in that one.
Yes. Felicity. Anyway, So the thing that I sort of came away with some of this stuff from is that in my mind, and this will get into, sort of some of our lowlights from both of these houses. I found that for me, when A24 hit, it hit. And when it missed, it missed. There was very, very little middle ground, except for like Men. Men was maybe a middle ground for me because I don't know what that film's saying, but I think it did it pretty well. And I think Jesse Buckley was really good in it. So like that movie is one that I put on the good side, but I don't understand it. But most of the A24 movies for me, like I loved it or I hated it. Whereas Blumhouse, there's a whole bunch of movies that are right there on the bubble, which is kind of what you were saying too, where it's like, that was cool. But it's not something I'm like, oh, that was amazing. So do you guys find that the same, or do you disagree with that, or what do you think?
I think I agree with what you're saying about Blumhouse, really. And I gave you a list of films that I like on there, but there's very few on there apart from maybe Creep 2. Like I say, I do have a soft spot for Paranormal Activity.
Also Unfriended. I thought Unfriended was really good for what it was.
Yeah. The only good thing about Unfriended is it gave us Host, which was much better.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not like Unfriended.
I think I liked Unfriended more than Host. I don't know.
I didn't like Host either, so I think I'm in the minority there, and I just did not like Host.
Now, Unfriended Dark Web was a giant mess, so we can agree on that one.
Yeah, that was a weird film. But yeah, I think you're right. Like the A24 films, I've really liked, and they've made an impact. Whereas there's very few Blumhouse ones I can pick out. Like I say, maybe Paranormal Activity, which did have quite an effect on me. I kind of watched Paranormal Activity before it came out, or at least before it was big, and I watched it on my laptop, on my own in the dark, and it had an effect on me. So, but yeah.
Just out of curiosity, because I was going to mention this earlier when we first mentioned that Paranormal Activity or Blair Witch.
Paranormal Activity.
Witch.
Really? I'd go Paranormal.
Like which one? Like which one to prefer?
Yeah, which is the better movie?
Oh, Blair Witch, 100%.
Really? I think I'd go Paranormal Activity because
I mean, admittedly, I like Paranormal Activity, but I don't dislike Paranormal Activity. I think it's a fine movie, and I think it has a lot of enjoyable things. But I mean, Blair Witch was a phenomenon.
Okay, Paranormal Activity 2 or Blair Witch 2?
Paranormal Activity 2.
Come on now.
Mark, Paranormal Activity or Blair Witch?
Yeah, Paranormal Activity. I go down the road of thinking that Blair Witch is not as good. The longer it goes, the worse it gets, I think, as a film. And the only thing that really stands out is that ending.
I do think that it's sort of tough to judge the two because like Paranormal Activity would not have been made if Blair Witch hadn't been made. Like it does kind of rest on those shoulders. And it's like, how do you judge a movie that didn't have the same level of stuff? Although if I'm going to watch one of these, I definitely watch Paranormal Activity. So now that we talked about some of the ups and downs,
wait, real quick, just to finalize my take on that. Part of the reason why I think that I even think the Blair Witch is a better made movie. Nobody thought that Paranormal Activity was real afterwards. People were not worried in trying to find those people after the fact. Blair Witch really succeeded in making you think that you were watching somebody's film footage that was left out in the woods, and the people were genuinely convinced on that.
You are correct. I remember I was actually working over at a college town and people were talking about that. However, it should also be said that Paranormal Activity was made in an era where the Blair Witch had come out. So I think it would have been difficult for them to do that same thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're both good movies. Although
found footage goes all the way back to Cannibal Holocaust, really, doesn't it? So
yeah,
it's got a history, and I think that there's just a big difference between the big difference between Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity probably is the cost of making that movie. Whereas, Blair Witch was made at a time where making a movie, you still had to get good cameras and and, you know, really go for it. Whereas now someone can make found footage movies with their phone, you know, and they might not be and they might not be as good, but, you know.
Although I'll tell you what, the one thing that you can't say about Blair Witch is Paranormal Activity just drilled that concept into the ground over the course of how many sequels are there? Like 5?
I think there's 8. I think Paranormal Activity. There's now like I think there's 8 now. I think there's 8 total because there's a new one that just came out. That one was either 7 or 8. I think
that one
might have been 7. Maybe
that one wasn't very good.
Yeah, no, it wasn't good at all.
So anyway, so what from A24? We talked about some of the low lights. Is there any ones that you guys didn't like from A24 that we didn't talk about already?
Yeah, I'll talk about the one that I don't like from A24. And it's not so much the content of the movie, because the content of the movie I think is actually fine. And It Comes at Night. And It Comes at Night, it was just it 100% was a victim of that marketing for me, because you sold me a movie, even down to the title, and you sold me a monster movie. You sold me a movie about people out in the woods in this spooky thing that comes at night. It comes at night. And the trailer, if you watch that trailer is not for the movie that you get. And so I'm sitting there watching the movie. I'm going like,
and I'm on the intercom.
What is this? Am I watching the wrong thing? What's happening here? And then when it's just a virus movie, I felt so cheated by the entire process. And it wasn't the movie's fault, because the movie's fine. I watched it again much later afterwards. Like, yeah, this movie's all right. This movie's a good movie. But it was just, I was so like bitter taste from that experience of basically somebody being like, I'm going to give you a delicious cheeseburger and French fries. Just kidding. It's a salad. You know, and it's just, it was not the experience that I was aiming for. And sure, it was a pleasant experience because, I mean, I like salad. Who doesn't like salad? But I wanted a cheeseburger, damn it. And you know what? That will always stick in my head as just being like, what were you thinking?
That's really an interesting way you bring that up, because I watched the movie for the first time right when it came out. And this may be a controversial opinion. I hate movie trailers. I despise them. I avoid them like the plague. I only watch trailers of a very few amount of movies. When I go to the movies, I look at my phone when the trailer's on. I think the trailers are mostly bad for movies. I think they hurt movies more than they do anything else. And so the first time I watched it, I hadn't seen any trailers for it. So I didn't have many expectations going in. And then I watched it again, maybe, I don't know, a month or so ago. And I really liked it. I thought the characters were, by the way, Joel Edgerton from The Gift and It Comes at Night. But that totally makes sense. The idea that if you go into a movie with a certain expectation, that it could, you know, like imagine if you went to watch Rob Zombie's The Munsters and it wasn't terrible. You'd be so disappointed.
Well, yeah, it's funny because I have a very similar opinion on trailers. I don't watch trailers very frequently, but I do watch trailers if I don't know what a movie's about, or if I don't know anything about it or who it's from. There's certain movies that like for example, Jordan, I saw a teaser for Jordan Peele's Nope, but because I couldn't avoid it, because I was in a theater and I was sitting there.
Sick of seeing trailers for that movie. They're like every movie I go to, and I'm just like, I'm going to go see the thing. Stop showing me trailers.
Exactly. Like my whole thing is that if it's a movie that I know right off the bat, that like a Marvel movie, I'm not going to watch a trailer for a Marvel movie. I know what it is. I know what it's going to be about. I know who the characters are. You don't need to sell me on this. I'm going to go see it. So why would I show myself scenes from it beforehand? But if there's something that's coming out that I don't necessarily know what it is, or I don't know who the people are behind it, I'll watch a trailer and be like, yeah, let me see. Because the whole purpose of a trailer is to be like, is to entice you into seeing the movie. So if I'm already committed, like in my head, that like, yeah, I want to see this movie, then I'm not going to watch a trailer for it. But if it's an unknown entity that I'm like, I don't really know if I want to watch this or not, I'll watch a trailer and be like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'll watch that. Sure.
You mean like an unknown entity that comes at night?
Yes. Yes.
Was there any other A24s that we didn't talk about that were kind of, disappointments for you?
Oh, sorry, me or Mark?
Josh, sorry.
Oh, okay. As I'm looking over, that's the only ones I think that, like, there's a couple of them that I was a little iffy on. Like I said, I thought Saint Maud was a little overhyped. I didn't think it was a bad movie. I just thought that it had a lot of hype going in that it didn't quite live up to. And the other one, I just saw it. Let me see what it was. The title. Oh, The Hole in the Ground was the other one that I remember thinking, like, it had a pretty substantial amount of buzz, and I thought it was decent. But Hole in the Ground felt like a Blumhouse movie to me. I knew what was going to happen from the beginning, and it pretty much was exactly the movie that I thought it was going to be. And it didn't really offer me anything unique or interesting. It was just kind of the same old. And it was fine. But again, it was kind of disappointing because I think I was expecting something a little bit different for A24.
I kind of think the same way with Hole in the Ground. I marked it as good in the binary because I had to go one way or the other, but it definitely wasn't. And the other one that got me was The Black Coat's Daughter. That was one that I feel like people talked a lot about, and I don't think it was bad. I think you even marked it as good, but didn't really. Yeah. It was just kind of there. Mark,
it's interesting, but it's not a great movie. But I liked it, but
and not particularly surprising either. It's just kind of
okay.
Mark, what other A24 movies did you not like that we maybe haven't talked about?
Well, I would like to echo everything about It Comes at Night. I felt like I did that rant then. That was the same rant that I was going to say. Well, and this is going to be an unpopular opinion, I think, but I really didn't get on board with Ex Machina.
I didn't even have that on my list as horror, but yeah, I love that movie.
I think I had it as horror because it gets quite brutal towards the end.
Oh yeah, to be fair, and I think I'm not sure if we talked about this before we started recording or after. I'm totally not interested in the people that are like, well, that's not horror or that's not horror. It's like,
oh, you did say that. Yeah,
like the most boring, argument in the world of somebody saying, no, you can't call that horror. It's like, Alien is horror and it's sci-fi. Get over it.
Yeah.
It can be both.
Well, I've got Alien coming up on the podcast, so that I'm looking forward to that. It's absolutely a horror film.
Yeah.
I watched Alien when I was way too young. I watched Alien when I was like 10 years old or something.
I'm talking about Alien an awful lot this week. There's multiple videos about Alien this week.
I've got
I love Split Second. Split Second's one of my favorite.
Split Seconds is so much fun.
Coffee and chocolate.
I'm with you on Ex Machina though, because Mark, because although I do enjoy it, and I did think it was I thought it was a pretty damn good film. But it was one of those other ones. It was one of those ones where it had been talked up quite a bit before I went to see it. I watched it at home. I didn't go anywhere. I don't know why I say I went to see it. I went literally right here. So
you went to the living room to see it.
Yes. But it was it wasn't as impactful as I was hoping for. I was really hoping for a little bit something more from it. And whereas I thought it was a pretty excellent film, done really well, some of the coolest special effects I've seen in a while, it just didn't stay with me like I was kind of hoping it would.
Yeah, I basically agree with all that. I think it's well acted and well made, but it just was one of those films where I got to the end of it and went, I'll never watch that again.
I'll tell you what, it'll change entirely if you watch it as a prequel to the Tomb Raider movie. Tomb Raider's actually a robot.
There you go.
The only one that we didn't talk about that I have strong feelings about and really didn't like was False Positive. I thought that movie was kind of terrible.
I haven't seen it.
It is Cut Rate Rosemary's Baby with one of the two girls from Broad City, and I can never remember which. I get their names mixed up. Anyway, it's like the villain is obvious from, I'm not somebody who tries to figure out who the villain is. I think that's kind of boring and it kind of ruins the movie. But sometimes they make it so freaking obvious that you're just like, so that's the killer, right? Like that guy right there's the killer, right? Like him, like, because that's obvious. And then you get to the end of the movie and it's like, it's that guy. And you're like, yeah, because that was obviously going to be the bad guy. And so I watched False Positive and there's like some weird little stuff at the end, but I came out of that movie like, it's funny. You sort of mentioned something feeling more like Blumhouse. That felt more like Blumhouse to me. Yeah. It felt like Blumhouse pretending to be A24, but was actually A24.
Yeah.
And I don't
My
know.
wife watched that. I just looked that one up, and my wife watched it, and I remember her talking about it. I remember going up, and she was about halfway through it. I remember saying, like, how is it? What do you think? She was just like, I think I figured this out. And like with the afterwards that she came out, she was like, yep, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's not particularly, it's one of those things like, have you ever met somebody or had a president who thinks they're really clever, but but is obviously not clever, and they tell you something that they've just learned, like it's like new information, and you're like, yeah, I knew that because I'm not because I'm smart, just because I'm like a functioning adult. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. And it's not like a terrible movie. It's just kind of, yeah. So moving from A24 misses to Blumhouse misses. Mark, what were some of the Blumhouse movies that you felt were kind of misses and that you didn't care for?
I don't like The Purge.
Damn you.
I think it's a stupid movie.
That doesn't mean it's not a good movie.
No, I think
I agree, it's stupid.
I think that's one of those going back to an earlier thing about where it takes you out of it. It starts great and ends so stupid that I'm just like, at the end, I don't even really care anymore.
So are you talking about the whole series or just the first movie?
Just the first movie. I haven't watched any of the others. Let's see.
Anarchy's basically the best one.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. It's not really horror, but The Craft Legacy was a fucking joke. I really hated that.
You said The Craft Legacy, but for some reason I was thinking of the Black Christmas remake that Blumhouse did, which also
the sequel
also
to
very
Craft,
good.
The Craft. I love The Craft. That's one of my favorites, but The Craft Legacy was absolute toilet water. I didn't.
So is the craft is that supposed to be like a sequel, or is it related, or is it?
It's vaguely related. It's the same film again, but nowhere near as good. And a little bit. Considering when it was made, it feels a bit like backwards in time in terms of, what's acceptable. I wasn't really on board with it.
100% less Nev Campbell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And all of them, I think one of them's at the end. Who's next? I've really vagued out there. The Visit, I didn't like because I felt like I don't like a twist that's obvious right at the beginning. And The Visit couldn't have been any more obvious right from the beginning. And there's no, apart from, I think there's a scene in it where the kid's under the house and the weird grandma starts crawling towards him under the house, which is pretty freaky. But I didn't do much for me. Let's see.
M. Night Shyamalan is an interesting director just because he has like such highs and such lows.
I think he's been going lower and lower and lower since Sixth Sense. No, not Sixth Sense.
Well, I might mention one of his films in this particular list as well.
What was the Alien one? Because that one was okay.
Oh,
Signs.
Yeah,
Signs was okay, but I can't think of a good film he's done after that. Old is one of the weirdest and worst acted films I've seen in such a long time. I can't believe how bad the acting is in it.
Old is such a piece of garbage. Old is such a garbage movie. So terrible.
I've never been able to draw myself to actually watch it.
It's so bad.
Obviously Halloween Kills, which again I did put it in my good movie column, but it is not a good movie.
Josh, do you have anything to say about Halloween Kills? Do you have any strong feelings about that movie?
He loves it.
I will just repeat the thing that I always say whenever somebody talks about Halloween Kills. I will say that I believe, and I truly believe this. I believe that they made a movie called Halloween Kills, and they finished it, and they sat down and said, "Dude, your movie's 3 hours long. You need to cut some of this stuff out." And they sat down and they said, "Okay, well, we're just going to trim out all of the scenes that don't really matter, that don't really have any impact and that nothing really happens in. And then they edited out all of those scenes. And so then they had, an hour and a half of the movie, and then this hour and a half of like deleted scenes where nothing happens. But then they accidentally released that. And that was what got put out as But then by that point, they were too late. They're like, oh no, the deleted scenes got put out as the actual movie. We'll just run with it. And they did.
My favorite part about Halloween Kills is when they're all running around the hospital. And in my head, the Benny Hill music was playing as they're running around the hospital.
The only other one that I really, really hated was the remake of Martyrs, because I just thought it was kick in the face.
I've never seen that one or the original. I'm a bad horror person.
No, I don't think so. You can't watch everything.
Josh, have you seen Martyrs or the remake?
I am also in that same camp. I have not watched the original Martyrs because I just constantly am in that mind of I don't want to be that depressed right now. And because I haven't seen the original, I'm not going to watch the remake. I'm not going to watch the remake before I watch the original. That's for sure. But I do want to watch it. And I think I will eventually watch it. But it's just one of those things I keep putting off.
Just out of curiosity, because this is kind of something that with that one, are there any horror movies that are out there that you just won't watch?
Yeah.
Like just because you think either too disturbing, too nasty, too whatever?
No. I mean, I'll watch whatever. I mean, there's certain movies that like I'll make sure that I don't pay anything for. Like anything by the Jeepers Creepers guy. I won't give that guy a dime of my money. There's certain movies that I feel like obviously like a lot of the movies that tend to focus around unnecessarily lascivious portrayals of sexual assault. You have a movie like American Mary or like something like MFA where it's part of the plot line, but it's treated in a more disturbing way. But then you've got like I Spit on Your Grave, where I almost feel like that's like part of the reason why they want to make that movie is to make that scene. Mm-hmm. Obviously those movies I have a little bit more of a distaste for, and I don't really want to cover them just because it's like, I don't really want to give it more focus, but I'll still watch them just to see what the deal is. But I mean, I've seen a Serbian film, and
which one?
A Serbian film. You only need to see one. And I mean, I'm sad to say that on that. Are you familiar with the disturbing movie Iceberg? Do you know? Have you seen that? There's
I found it very disturbing.
There's an image going around. It's a disturbing movie Iceberg, and it has all the various levels. And the top portion is like the movies that are not that disturbing, and the further down you go, the more like really disturbing it gets. And the bottom layer is like just basically snuff films. And I've seen further down on that iceberg than I would like to admit. Yeah, but yeah, I'll watch whatever.
How far down is Morbius?
Morbius is pretty low.
I feel like that's at the bottom. Like that's like below snuff films.
I'm pretty disturbed by the Monsters trailer though. So there you go.
Oh God. Sorry, Mark. So did you have any other ones of the Blumhouse?
No, I don't think so. No. But answering your question before, I won't watch a Serbian film. It's on my list of things I won't watch, and I never want to see Human Centipede.
By the way, somebody told me that Human Centipede, like the set was supposed to be super friendly and very like very welcoming. You sort of think like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as being one of the most horrible sets to be on, and then apparently Human Centipede was very welcoming and like super comfortable set, and like
I could see that.
Go figure.
Yeah, I'm sure it was, and I don't find it disturbing to watch. I just like, for whatever reason, I've added it to my list of films that I never feel the need to watch.
The first one is no more disturbing or unsettling than Tusk is. I mean, it's essentially the same movie, except instead of the comedy of a guy in a tusk suit, you've got the people with their faces in each other's butt, which is actually slightly more humorous. So it lightens things up a little more even. But it's really, the first one just feels like a regular movie. I mean, it's really not that unsettling. The second one is really disturbing, just with like, we're going to gross you out.
Yeah.
I feel like what really disturbs about Tusk is the presence of Kevin Smith. So Josh, what are your lowlights from Blumhouse? Movies that stand out as bad.
As I look over this list, there's an easy dozen. There's so many movies here that I don't care for. I mean, the entire Insidious series, I don't care for. The later Paranormal Activity movies, I don't care. There's so many on here that I'm just like, I would never watch that again. The Unfriended movies, which I just do not care for. But there's a couple on here that I reserve a special distaste for. And one of them I won't spend a lot of time because we talked about it briefly, was the Visit, which I know some people tend to like it. But yes, I mean, I knew the twist within the first 10 minutes, and I'm sorry, old people just aren't scary to, I mean, oh no, old people, it's an old man. That's not, doesn't do anything for me.
Well, clearly you're not an insurance company.
I guess, yes.
They're terrifying.
And the other ones that really stand out as being like, what the hell happened here? One of them is Fantasy Island, which was just
Is that Blumhouse? I didn't even know that was Blumhouse.
It is Blumhouse. It is Blumhouse. It's just very confusing to me that it got made. And there was just such opportunity to be insane and funny and fun and clever and weird with that. And they it just followed the Blumhouse formula to a T. And then they had this twist that does not make any sense with the things that you saw before. So it completely just poops.
It's such a nothing film.
Yes. It's garbage.
I feel like we should mention Glass. Because Glass was terrible.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to call that horror, I guess, but I mean, you could. There's definitely
the prior movie, which was
Split, which I also didn't care for. I also
was
did
okay.
not care for. It had a couple of moments. I thought it was very cringy to me. Like I like very much like, oh, they're really trying here. They're really trying.
But it had Bruce Willis at the end, so there's a split cinematic universe. Doesn't that make you feel great? No, I thought it was awful. It just shows you that, man, it's like, I feel like that guy had everything to make that movie good, and it's just trash. Like, you watch it and it's not even. So I guess what bothers me more, when you see a movie that is just total garbage, you're at least a little impressed by it, that something could just be total garbage. But then there's other movies, sort of like we were talking about towards the beginning, a movie where you're just like, this is just nothing. Like, there's just nothing here at all. And I felt like that's watching Glass. Is just like he had one movie that was, I think was it an Academy Award winner? Was Sixth Sense Academy Award winner?
I think so, yeah. Got something.
Right, yeah. And then he did Split, which I thought was decent. Or no, I'm sorry, not Sixth Sense. I was thinking not Sixth Sense. Unbreakable, right? Which definitely did not win the Oscars, but like, it was a good movie. It was a super solid movie, and Samuel Jackson,
very good movie. I think Unbreakable is his best movie to me. That's my favorite of his movies.
Great. I am sympathetic to that opinion. And then you get this, and you're just like, so you clearly have quality actors, although at that point, Bruce Willis, I think it was, not trying super hard in a lot of that era's movies. But like, you have all this stuff and you just do nothing with it. Like the script is nothing and the characters are nothing. And it's just nothing. And then the other one that bugged me a lot, like I said, I did not finish it because I just was more bored than anything else, was Lords of Salem, because it's a Rob Zombie movie and Rob Zombie is not a filmmaker. I don't concede that he is a filmmaker.
I was also going to mention The Gallows, because The Gallows is one of the worst movies I've seen in a long time. But I just saw this, and again, it's one that I guess you might not want to call horror, but you could also, is The Hunt, which I got flack for. I guess I'm one of the few people that really, really disliked this movie dramatically, but I hated The Hunt. Especially because it was like one that got treated like they got a whole lot of flack because they're just like, oh, well, this is an anti-conservative movie, and it's just like, but it kind of wasn't. It's just like, oh, is it an anti-liberal? It's like, it was the epitome of I'm gonna try and like shoehorn every weird political opinion into this, but caricatures of it, and it just felt very silly to me.
Sort of,
I just
I'm going to be political without being political.
Yes,
actually, a great Kevin Smith movie for that was Red State, which I thought was just
Red State was pretty cool.
That was I hated that movie so much.
But I will say the flip side of that, because it was a movie that got a bunch of flack ahead of time, and you mentioned earlier, was the Black Christmas 2019 movie, which I watched. And I certainly won't say that I liked, but I did not get the hate that movie got.
I'm going to look to see what I rated that as, because I was kind of on the fence on that one, actually.
It's fine. It's as standard of a movie as you can get, but because it has like 3 or 4 rather prominent feminist moments, it got all of that hate. Like, oh, there they push this feminist agenda down my throat. And it's kind of like, it's really not that, it's not that over the top in the movie, dude.
I think my problem actually would be the other way, because it's like they wanted to kind of make it feministy, but then they kind of didn't. Because they were like, these guys aren't assholes. It's just this black goo. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of just, again, it sort of goes back in the realm of just kind of being whatever.
Yeah, I felt like the movie that doesn't deserve the hate, it doesn't deserve the love, because it's just such a middle of the road movie that doesn't really want to say anything. And I think that's the problem is it got a lot of flack because people were just like, oh, it's saying all of this, and like, but it's not saying anything. It's just surface level, dude.
Mark, did you watch the new Black Christmas?
No, I don't think I did.
You'll be
try not to watch too many remakes.
I don't know. There are some good ones. I would agree with you. It definitely did not deserve the flack. I don't think it deserved the credit. It was just kind of solid.
It's fine.
Solid C+.
Yeah, it's fine.
I was going to see if there's any other ones. I just kind of going through these again. Very much Dash Cam and Halloween Kills. Halloween Kills. I should say, give my hate on Halloween Kills. That movie was just ridiculous. It is. There is nothing in that movie that seems like it's even close to a Halloween movie. The only thing that prevents that from being the worst Halloween movie is the fact that somebody gave Rob Zombie a director's chair for 2 films. If not for that, this would be by far the worst Halloween film.
Yes. You want to hear my fun Halloween Kills story?
Absolutely.
So Stella just graduated preschool. And one of the kids that she went to preschool with, I guess I won't name names just out of privacy's sake, but one of the kids she goes to preschool with is a celebrity dad, and I would see the celebrity dad when I drop off and pick up, and we'd chit chat every once in a while, and he's been in a lot of things.
It's Robert De Niro, isn't it?
It is not. But so a couple weeks back, I sent out a message to all of the parents of her preschool because the school was over. And I said, hey, does anybody want to have a play date? Like, let the kids meet up at the park. And a couple of parents said, yeah. And he was one of them. He said, yeah, we'll bring my kid. And they came and he came up to me like partway through, and he just like walked up, and I was very pleased because he walked up. He's just like, you've got the YouTube channel, right? You talk about the horror movies and stuff. I'm like, yes, I do. So we talked for like an hour and a half of just movies and horror stuff, whatever. But there was a point where he was just like, yeah, one of my good friends is really doing well with some horror stuff right now. He directed the new Halloween movies, and I was just like, oh, he directed Halloween Kills. Yeah. David Gordon Green. Yeah, I was just like, yeah,
that's certainly a movie.
I was like, yeah, I don't. And I said, please don't tell him about my channel, because he'll go and there's a whole video talking about how much I hated that movie.
I remember hate is engagement too, so tell him about it. Yes,
indeed. I'm getting out the word. There's no such thing as bad publicity, right? But it was kind of funny. He like laughed. He was just like, yeah. He said he's gotten some flack for that one. So,
can the third one be good? Is it possible?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm in the weird camp of I didn't love the 2018 one, H40. Oh, I didn't dislike it. I just thought it was kind of like, man, okay, another Halloween movie. Um, there was parts of it that I liked, but then there was other parts of it that I thought were really very forced. But
I
it
hadn't
had some
heard
good stuff.
H4O.
Oh yeah.
Very appropriate.
That's what we call it around these parts.
Mark, did you like the 2018 Halloween movie? How would you sit on that one?
Yeah, it was probably one of my favorite sequels to it. But that one feels like a Halloween film, apart from it's one of the stupid twists in it. But oh, I suppose it doesn't matter, does it? We can spoil that. There's the bit in it where the doctor suddenly decides that.
Yeah, that was pretty dumb.
Well, what's fucking going on here? What the hell is going on here?
I've got to ask, and it's like, who gives a shit?
We've got to get Michael and Laurie in the same place. How are we going to do it? I don't know. Doctor drives them there. Whatever.
Yeah,
done.
I thought that was dumb, but overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it stands out. It's at least a Halloween film, whereas Halloween Kills at points feels like a Friday the 13th movie. The moment in that film in Halloween Kills when he kills all those firefighters right at the beginning, just and that's right at the beginning where I go, right, no, that's not for me.
It takes place pretty early.
It just doesn't make any sense.
I just want to wait for another 10 years when they bring the druids back.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Give me that crown of thorn.
Paul Rudd and druids.
I want a return. I want somebody to come back and say, you know what? I'm just going to pick up where part 6 left off. We're just going to pretend. Now we're going to do the opposite way, and we're going to pretend like these alternate continuities aren't real, and the first movie through 6th movie are canon. Again, we're going to go back to that. That's what I want.
I just want there a crawl to be right at the beginning. It says, "There's druids. Deal with it."
We're mixing in Halloween 3 too. Come on, let's have it all.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, Halloween 3 should be a part of all of them. Damn it. Halloween 3 is magical.
So I think we've been talking for a little while. And more importantly, my drink's empty. So, so which is better? Or does that even matter? Josh, start off with you. Is one studio better, or does that even matter?
I think better is a very subjective term to use here, because I think that ultimately, I would say that in terms of I'm going to preface this with saying when I say what I think is better, I'm saying better for me, because I think that A24 is better for me because the movies that they make are more towards my inclinations of cinema, whereas I think Blumhouse would be better for people that like a little bit more, that like more traditional, more standard horror films, and I think that there's a market for that as well too. And either one of those are valid things to appreciate. Like I think that there's definitely things in A24 that your average viewer would be like, that's not for me, and I get that, but A24 is the one that when I see a movie's coming out from A24, I get a little bit like, oh, I'm more intrigued than I would be from something from Blumhouse, because in my opinion, when I see Blumhouse, I think that like, okay, it's going to be pretty standard. Whereas I think that like when I see something from A24, I think, oh, this is going to be a little bit more challenging.
All right, Mark, what about you? Is one studio better, or does it even matter if there is one that's better?
Well,
and by the way, this is the internet, so one has to be better. Has to be.
Well, the real answer is that A24 make better movies. There's no doubt about it. They make better movies. The thing about A24 movies is every horror movie of theirs they've watched, you're going to have to bear with me because I'm not quite sure what my point is. I have got something out.
I find myself there all the time.
I've got something out of all of the A24 movies, and they're good movies, but there's a lot of them like that I can't tell you that I've enjoyed because they make me feel horrible, which is kind of what you want from a horror film. Whereas there are a lot of Blumhouse movies that I can say I've sat through and enjoyed, and so But you know what? Let's just have an opinion on it. I'm going to say that A24 make better movies.
Sounds good. So I'm going to go to my little spreadsheet here. So because I am both OCD and have a rudimentary understanding of Excel, I have set up a spreadsheet for. So I mark 99 current Blumhouse horror movies and 23 current A24 horror movies. I have seen 21 Blumhouse and 21 A24 and 61 total Blumhouse movies. So I have seen 91%, because there's a little percent thing in Excel. 91% of the A24 movies, 61% of the A24 movie, or of the Blumhouse movies. Mm-hmm. The A24, I have thought that 61% of them are good movies. And I have thought that a Blumhouse, 59% of them are good movies. So science doesn't lie. A24 is better. And that's probably meaningless. But that being said, do you guys have any final thoughts? A24, Blumhouse, any movies we didn't talk about or anything we didn't touch on that you think is kind of important?
No, not really. The only thing I wanted to ask is if either of you seen Lamb and if it's any good.
I have not watched it yet.
I haven't seen Lamb yet.
It's A24, so it's going to be weird.
I will,
Lamb, baby, right?
I will say that I feel as if the Lamb had the same thing happen with it that I saw with Saint Maud, where I feel like people were talking about it and had some buzz and people really playing it up a bit and discussing it. But then as soon as it came out, like all discussion ceased, which doesn't really give me a good feeling about it. It makes me a little bit wary, but I have not yet hear anybody say that they hated it.
I think it's an ineffective prequel to Lamb Chop.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
All right, Mark, do you have any final thoughts on Blumhouse or A24 or anything else?
The only thing, I came in here and I was sure I was going to fight Blumhouse's corner, but I didn't.
Look, yeah, we don't hate Blumhouse. I mean, that's the thing about this is like I don't like either. I don't hate either one of these studios. You know, it's I feel like A24 is more interesting maybe, but also Blumhouse has a ton of really interesting films. So
yeah. Blumhouse has more, and it's funny because I was operating. I think I even made a couple comments on here that apparently I thought that the Conjuring movies were Blumhouse, but apparently they are not. But they sure as hell feel like Blumhouse movies. Yeah, I mean, looking through the list of movies that they made, I know that I definitely see some stinkers in there, but there's quite a few pretty solid flicks interspersed in there as well, too. So can't be that mad at them.
Okay, Josh, would you tell us what you got going on? What's coming up?
Oh, yeah. I mean, lots of good stuff coming up. I just launched a new series called The 80s Project, which has been a lot of fun. I'm attempting to watch every major horror film of the 1980s. Starting with January 1st, 1980. It is going on. I'm working on episode 3 right now, and we're in May of 1980. There will be 9 episodes of 1 year. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and videos every single Friday and every Monday on Movie Timelines on YouTube.
Sounds good. I watch. Mark, what do you have coming up?
So I have a horror podcast, Creative Psychopaths. And we have got Alien on the way. That's the next movie we're going to talk about. But I've just installed a new co-host, permanent co-host. So we're going to spend August together, just the two of us. That'd be nice. Just working on getting the podcast how we want it. So that should be good. And I am going to answer all my questions, which because we normally have a guest format where people come on and answer the questions. And I was going to wait and answer my questions at episode 100, but I feel like it's holding me back, the fact that I can't say things because I don't want to let my answers go. So for that episode, I'm probably going to do Behind the Mask, Rise of Leslie Vernon, and then answer my questions.
We talked about that movie. I love that movie. All right. I want to thank everybody for watching. Check them out. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a good drink. Have a good day.